A few questions from your presentation.
Sure.
Our knowledge economy was severely halted since the onset of the pandemic, like you said. So I was wondering, what is one immediate step that we can take to strengthen our knowledge economy? As well as another interesting point that I noticed from your presentation, and something that I have seen around myself as well. Our focus has been more on technology than people, and people are our main resource for development. So how can we enhance our human capital, and how can we promote it?
Excellent question. That question is very close to my heart, because especially when we talk about people or students from the developing countries, they go to a developed country, let's say on a scholarship. A person from Pakistan or any other developed country goes over to a developed country, and you would see that the person is able to perform miracles. A researcher that could be let's say an average researcher or worker in a developing country, when they move on to a developed country, you would see that that person is able to perform miracles, right? The output of that researcher is quite enhanced. And the question would always come to me that why is that happening? Why a person, when after spending so much time in a developed country, when he comes back to his own motherland, the productivity of that person is reduced again? What is behind that? What happens to the mindset of the person? Why is that happening? So that created an interest for me, and then I would refer back to the intellectual capital management, ICM, that is focusing on the reasons behind the reduction in output or increased output of a system. Now, as we were talking, that the intellectual capital management, the value addition is multiplication of three things: the human structure, the human capital, the structural capital, and the relational capital, right? Now, keeping this in mind, if a person from a developing country, a researcher, he has that human capital, right? Firstly, in Pakistan or in developing country, that human capital had to work with the structural capital of the local university and the relational capital of the university and its connectivity with the industry. So the total output of anybody would be the human capital. I would use the word multiplied by the structural capital, multiplied by the relational capital. Now, if any of these factors, A, B, C, the human capital, the structural capital, or relational capital is a zero, the net output would be a zero. Because you can have a perfect person, a 10 by 10 person, an excellent researcher, an excellent worker. But when that person is not working in a good environment, his work is reduced. And when that environment is not overall connected with an overall network, the relational capital is another reduction factor. So for an equation of a person which is working in a developing country, human capital can be excellent, but the structural capital is a negative and the relational capital is a negative. And as a result, the overall output is reduced. But now when that same person goes into a developed country, America, USA, Germany, Japan, or any other country, that human factor is the same, 10 by 10. But when you multiply that with the structural capital, the copyrights of that organization, the HR department in that organization, the culture of that organization, that gives a multiple boost. And again, the relational capital, that is another boost, that how that industry is connected with educational institution is connected with the industry. So that human capital gets two multipliers. One is the structural capital and the other is the relational capital. So as a result of that, you have a very strong overall value by the same person. But now, after spending, let's say, 5 or 6 years in that developed country, he comes back to his own motherland, and again says that I want to serve in this country. Now, again, coming back to this equation, that human capital has further improved himself based on the experience, based on the education in that country, that human capital has increased. So, ideally speaking, it should have been that we should be able to get more from that human. But in this equation, in the developing countries, that HR, human capital, when we multiply that with the structural capital, unfortunately, it is not positive here, but sort of negative. And the relational capital again, unfortunately, that is also not a positive number. So the overall value that you get from that human capital is reduced. Therefore, I was able to see that the reason behind our brain drain is that our human capital, when that is not able to perform in its own country, in its own environment, and when that human capital is able to perform better in another country, naturally, being a human, they feel that they are able to contribute more in another country, so they move over to that. So I think that will answer your question in a very general form, because we are short of time also, that when we talk about humans, we have to see how that intellectual capital must be managed. We can have excellent human beings in all around the world, in all the developed countries and the developing countries. Unfortunately, the structural capital have not been developed in the developing countries, and the relational capital have not been developed. So if I am again going to link that with the triple helix model, if we apply the triple helix model on this human capital structure that we are talking, we would be able to increase the structural capital, right? Because when the university is connected with industry, when the university is connected with the government, they would have to have very defined roles, very defined rules and regulations. Therefore, the structural capital would be developed itself. And again, linking with the triple helix model, the relational capital will also improve, because the academia would be connected with industry, and the industry is connected with international community, international business network. So what we see is that human capital is connected with structural capital, is connected with the relational capital. And as a result of that, we will have a very high level of value generation from that system. And coming to your second question relating to the processes, the value addition of how that humans, they contribute to the 70% of value addition, and technology is only the 10%, and processes are the 20%. Again, if I connect this thing with the intellectual capital management, you would see that these two slides are not contradicting at all. We have people, which is the human capital, and we have the technology and processes. Basically, they help in both as a relational capital, because technology is able to connect to industries or to people or to segments, and the processes is basically the structural capital. Now, when we are talking about knowledge creation, when we are talking about knowledge economy, you would understand that it is basically the humans that generate an idea. All the ideas that are generated are basically generated in humans. And all the knowledge from KM perspective, the true knowledge is in the humans. In technology, we can have a database, but database is not a knowledge base, right? There is a difference between that. A database is a place where we are able to store data, store numbers, we are able to store relations, a relational database we are talking about. So the true knowledge comes from the human activity. That could be from the how people are connected with one